Hello everybody, West Country Explorer here, and for this video I'm at Bettiscombe and I'm going to be talking about the Screaming Skull at Bettiscombe Manor. A little while ago I did send a letter to Bettiscombe Manor asking if I could actually go and view the skull. Never heard a response from them, never heard anything back, so it doesn't surprise me. I was half expecting to hear absolutely nothing, and in a way kind of don't blame them. I'm half suspect they probably get inundated with requests from various people saying, oh, can I come and see the skull? And probably so many requests, they're probably fed up with responding and all the rest. So yeah, but anyway, I'm not able to go and actually see the skull itself, but what I'm going to do, a minute, if I stop twizzling around, what I'm going to do is I'm at the church at the moment, so I thought while I'm at the church I'll talk about the legend of the Screaming Skull of Bettiscombe. So, guys, hope you enjoy. I'm going to talk about the weather again, as a typical Englishman. It's what, roughly the middle of October, an absolutely beautiful day. Birds are out, blue sky, sun's out, even the roofers are out, retiling the church. Well, doing something to the roof. I thought I'd just do a little walk around the outside and also inside. And you can hear the guys working away on the roof. I thought I'll just do a little bit of recording around the church first. Now, the story of the Screaming Skull does have a few variations to it, but it all starts with Azariah Pinney, who in 1680s, the son of the Lord of the Manor then. And what happened was in the 1680s, he supported the Duke of Monmouth, the illegitimate son of Charles II. And Duke of Monmouth, he was claiming to be the rightful heir of the throne. And obviously Monmouth Rebellion was his attempt to try and claim the throne, didn't succeed, and a lot of his followers were sort of hung, like ordered to be hung by Judge Jeffreys. And Azariah Pinney, as one of the supporters of the Duke of Monmouth, he was going to be hung, but his sister paid a fine of £65 and got his death sentence commuted. So he wasn't hung. Instead, what had happened was he was sold as a slave and sent off to the West Indies. And whilst out in the West Indies, he worked hard, earned his freedom, and ended up sort of getting a sugar plantation for himself. Now, some variation to the story says that it was Azariah Pinney that came back with a slave stroke servant, a black person. Some variations of the story says it was one of his descendants, like a family member, John Pinney, who in the early 1800s sold the Pinney estate and came back with a black servant stroke slave. So suffice to say, it was one of the Pinney family members who came back to sort of Bettiscombe Manor with a black slave servant, and this servant eventually died. Again, some variants of the story says he died in a fight with his owner, whichever Pinney it was that brought him back. Other variations said he just passed away. So if I say his dying wish, this sort of black person, his dying wish was that his body be taken back to the West Indies and buried out there. Now his wish wasn't fulfilled by his owner. What happened instead was he was buried in Bettiscombe Church yard. Again, some variations of the story says that almost immediately there was disturbances coming from the grave, screams and all the rest and everything else, so much so that the locals complained, so the body was dug up, taken to the manor. And again, so like I said, body taken to the manor, and over time it's obviously decomposed and all the rest, and all that's left now is the skull. I've got here, this is a book, Ghosts of Dorset, Devon and Somerset, and it's one of the articles is on the like the screaming skull, and in it mentions about J.S. Udall, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, who wrote about the screaming skull. J.S. Udall in 1872 was the first one to put the story into print. And one thing that struck me was when talking about Udall's account of the screaming skull, he commented on the fact that he was furious to read that other writers had lent a somewhat heightened and conjectural aspect to the tradition of the screaming skull. His informant had been an old lady who in her younger days had often visited and stayed at the old manor house at Bettiscombe. She also resented the new accounts of the story which held that the skull had been heard screaming, and added other innovations. So basically, this skull story, the whole fact that it was a screaming skull, the screaming bit was added later. So, you know, according to this account I'm reading in this book, it gives the impression that the screaming didn't start straight away. So yeah, so that's a later addition to the legends. So yeah, interesting makes me wonder how that came about. So, but like I said, this story about the skull, for a long time it's all about this how it belonged to this slave, and also bits got added to it like the screaming, and also if the skull's taken out of the manor house, it's, you know, it causes an absolute ruckus, it screams, and it's only quiet if it's left in the house, and if it's taken away it's going to be sort of bad luck for the property and all the rest. Now in the 1960s, the then owner of the Bettiscombe Manor, I think it was a Michael Pinney who owned it then, he wanted where is it going? He got got in a professor to do a study, or like to sort of examine uh, the skull, and it was discovered that this skull actually didn't belong to sort of a black person. It belonged to a young lady aged between about sort of 25 and 30 years old, and it was about when the skull was, yeah, it was a European skull, like European lady, 25, 30 years old, and it was a few thousand years old, this skull. So not a black person from like the 17th, 18th, 19th century. It was a young European lady from many centuries ago. And one theory is it might have been the skull of a lady who lived at nearby Pilsden Pen, which is a local hill fort here. And she might have been a Celtic sacrificial offering. So, yeah, but nobody knows for sure. So yeah, there's a lot of new questions coming up, you know. So this screaming skull is not a negroid. Am I allowed to use that word? Apologies if not. So it's not the skull of a black person. It's a skull of a European young lady thousands of years ago. So the question is, who was she? How did her skull end up being at Bettiscombe Manor? And how did the story of it being of a black slave attach itself to the skull of a European lady? You know, so there's still lots of questions surrounding this legend. Yeah, and probably never get any conclusive answers. So there you go. There's a little bit of a backstory to the legends of the Bettiscombe Screaming Skull. What I'll do is I'll just twizzle you guys around again. Now I thought I'd do recording out here in the churchyard, but what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take you in here, back into the church. I'm going to bring you up here. Now, this is very difficult to read, but I mean, this is a sort of brass plaque, sort of for various members of the Pinney family. I think that's a John Pinney from what I can make out. That looks like, I think that's 1706 by the looks of it. He was 85, and that's of his, what's it, Jane, his wife, I think it is, 1690, 1698. Yeah, there's a John Pinney, their son, 1679, age 25. Somebody else, Scum, 1724, 65. His wife. There you go, look, Azariah Pinney of Bettiscombe, their youngest son, died 1719, aged 58, buried in London. I think is that London? So that would have been the Azariah Pinney who supported the Duke of Monmouth and was going to be hanged, but paid the fine, £65, got sent to the West Indies, a place called Nevis, as a slave, earned his freedom, started up a plantation. And it's him who, in some of the versions of the story, came back with the slave, with the black slave stroke servant, the one who is said to be the owner of the skull, if you can call it owner of the skull. So there you go. There's a bit of a story of the sort of skull. Like I said, it sort of research has indicated that it's the skull of a young European lady. So and that kind of raises more questions and that. So still no definite answer. I'm still quite intrigued by this skull and all the rest. I quite like to sort of try and find out for definite a bit. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to find anything out for definite, but I'd like to try and find out a bit more about the story, find out a bit more facts. So, you know, like I said, the research that was done in the 60s, I don't know if there was an update to that, if any more research was done, further investigation. So I might have a little poke around, see if I can find out more. And so, guys, I might be doing an update to this video at some point in the future with sort of, you know, more info and all the rest. I'm going to see if I can do a bit more research, and if I get anywhere with that research, I'll do an update, guys. But anyway, for the moment, that's all for this video. Hope you've enjoyed watching. Feel free to comment and like and all the rest and everything else. And in the meantime, the usual, stay safe, take care, God bless.